where we discuss the complicated topics of cannabis legalization and see what it really means for a society. I'm your host, Josh Macias, and today we're addressing one of the most prevalent topics in the cannabis use debate, which is the need for greater education about the risk and the benefits of cannabis use. Now, whether you're a strong advocate, skeptical, or just someone who's curious about how cannabis policies are influencing our world, one thing is clear. Misinformation is everywhere. People either see cannabis as a miracle drug or as a dangerous gateway substance to more hardcore drugs like cocaine, meth, and marijuana. But the reality is, it's much more complex than that. So today, we're looking at what research tells us about how cannabis legalization has impacted society, what people get wrong about its effects, and why the public education is a key moving forward. Let's start with the change in attitudes towards cannabis. Cannabis has evolved from an extremely prohibited substance to a widely accepted one in many places in recent decades. But why? One of the main reasons is how the media and public discourse has changed its image. Studies show that exposure to pro-cannabis content, especially on social media, has contributed to a more favorable image of the drug. However, research also finds these messages tend to focus on the benefits and ignore the risk. This imbalance is massive, that even as more people accept cannabis use, they might not be properly aware of the potential downsides like cannabis use disorder, also known as CUD, or impaired cognitive dysfunction. Next, we'll talk about the trends in cannabis use. Now let's talk about who is using cannabis and how legalization has influenced use rates. One concern was that legalization would lead to a huge spike in youth use. Try saying that 10 times fast. But data shows the opposite. Studies show that adolescent cannabis use has remained steady in legal cannabis states, but adult use has increased, particularly in states with medical marijuana laws and recreational marijuana laws. So what is playing the greatest role in these trends? Accessibility is part of it. The easier it is to legally access cannabis, the greater the use. But economic factors, including taxation, also have a major impact on consumption. Outrageous cannabis taxes, for example, have led to some consumers to continue purchasing from non-regulated sources, also known as plugs, as I've seen my friends in California who continue to buy off plugs due to the price of legal marijuana being so high because of these taxes. Next, we're going to discuss the public health and safety considerations of cannabis use. Legalization has also caused fears about public safety and health. For example, while cannabis is seen as a less dangerous than other drugs, like alcohol or opioids, it doesn't mean that they're safe. Cannabis has been linked by research to cognitive impairment, withdrawal symptoms, and increased risk of cannabis use disorder. I also saw something on social media today that said that cannabis use is linked to heart and cardiovascular issues, which is a big no-go as you only have one heart. So that's a big issue that a lot of people aren't really aware about. Another issue of cannabis use is impaired driving. Driving under the influence of alcohol has well been documented for years, but cannabis impairment is harder to measure, making enforcement tricky since there's nothing similar to a breathalyzer for cannabis detection. The science suggests that even though some users of marijuana believe they could drive safely while high, it's been shown that slow reaction time and judgment are both results of cannabis. So what do we do with all the information? One of the biggest gaps in cannabis policy is education. If people are going to use cannabis, whether legally or illegally, they should have access to research-based information about its positive and negative effects. Public health campaigns also must be better at showing both risk and benefits. At present, there's either a just say no movement that won't consider cannabis's possible medical applications, or a pro-cannabis message that won't consider the possible negatives. If we don't have robust educational campaigns, we risk making the same mistakes we did with drugs like tobacco and alcohol. where control and knowledge came after use became common. So where does this leave us? Cannabis legalization is here to stay in much of the country. But our work isn't done. As states move toward legal markets, we have to put education first by giving people the entire story so they can make intelligent choices. This means debunking misinformation, investing in more research, ensuring health and safety regulations keep up with the changing laws. Thanks for tuning in to the Clearing the Smoke podcast. If this discussion was enlightening to you, don't be shy about sharing this episode and keeping the dialogue going. Thank you.